Good morning, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us today. It's great to see all of you. Survived the party last night. My name is Romaine Buck. I'm a relationship manager at LinkedIn, and I am also a regional team lead for the Women at LinkedIn, which is LinkedIn's employee resource group for women to cultivate relationships, mentoring, fellowship, career planning, as well as just a way to give back to the community. I'm joined today by Linda Descano, who is the Managing Director for Social and Content at Citi, and she also happens to be the CEO of Women and Company, which is the digital resource for Citi. So thank you so much for joining us today. Our session is called Cultivating Women in Leadership. But as we thought about the details for our discussion today, we really realized that a lot of the themes would truly transcend gender and eventually be information for all of us as we're looking at career pathing, becoming leaders within our organizations, and if we're currently leaders, ways to be better at that. So our vision today is a casual discussion between the two of us. Linda's going to share lots of great knowledge, and we hope that you will find your time beneficial. And following our question and answer session, we'll open it up to you. If you have any questions, there's mics here in the room, so feel free to come up and ask questions of Linda. Sound good?
Great.
All right. I guess we'll get started then. So, Linda, this year on LinkedIn, we've posted a lot of sessions, a lot of blogs about what the writer knew or wished they knew when they were 22. You also had a great blog post about that. I'd love to fast forward the conversation a little bit to 10 years ago. What do you wish you knew in your career 10 years ago, and how would that have changed some of your decisions?
Well, with your permission, I'll go back 12 years ago, because that's when I had a major aha moment. Sure. I have always loved the work that I've done in various industries. And at that point in my life, I was just running Women in Company and so passionate about bringing financial education and knowledge to women that it really took over my life. And I was working 24/7, and happily so. But it was very safe. Safe because I had a lot of positive reinforcement from my colleagues, my manager, and business partners. And it was not risky because I didn't have to deal with life. And I had just been still processing a divorce and entering the dating scene, and it was really scary. And so I just turned inside. But what happened was I became very imbalanced. And as much as I thought I was being productive, I was making everyone around me less productive, because they would come in on Monday morning and have like 10, 15, 20 emails from me. And they would felt like, oh my gosh, I can't even get ahead. I'm already behind and not meeting her expectation. And I lost a sense of fresh perspectives. And it was really an intervention by my then manager, who said, I love you, but you're going to burn out and you're driving everyone crazy. So how can we channel your energy? And fortunately, two things happened. I became an aunt for the first time and learned what love was truly about. I don't have children. So that was my really introduction to true love. And then I met my now husband. And those things just helped me step back and realize I was missing out on life. And they say, no pain, no gain. You have to put yourself out there. You have to engage. You have to be willing to make the time. And I've changed today now. Every year I start with layering in all the important family events, all my important me time, us time with my husband, them time, our families, and then work. And so it really has changed, and I think made me a better manager, a better leader, a better partner, and just feel more fulfilled.
That's fantastic. It sounds like finding work-life balance was really the key there for you.
I think it was integrating. Yeah. I don't know that balance really exists, but I think you find ways of integrating, and at different points in the year, different points of the business cycle, one may take precedence or consume more energy, but then in other times there's an ebb and flow, and I think you just have to go with that.
Sure, no, that makes sense. So keeping with that theme of our younger selves, what are the top 3 mistakes you see consistently being made by people who are just starting out in their careers?
The very broad generalization. I think one thing I've seen is the desire to be a friend with your manager, and perhaps, and I'm basing this on how I see my cousins that are in my age group engage with their children, the millennials, that they're friends and they hang out. And I find that some of my younger employees want to engage me as a friend, want to friend me on Facebook. And I really establish boundaries. I'm a bit, I guess, old-fashioned in that regard. And I want people to have the freedom to vent to their family and friends and have that sense of privacy. But we're not at work to be friends. We have a job and a role to do. And so I do keep some of those professional boundaries. Secondly is that I think because we're all, we have this culture of instant gratification, a sense of if I do well, I want an immediate reward and I want to be promoted every year at a time when many companies are trying to go flat and reduce the number of layers, which changes how you think about promotion and expansion of role. And so there's a bit of a disconnect. And a third, in some young people, a desire that, okay, I have my MBA or master's degree, I should be coming in at like an SVP level. And there's a certain amount to pay the dues. I actually had one MBA candidate said to me, well, now that I have an MBA, I will not get coffee, I will not make photocopies, and I don't answer phones. And I said, well, I do all those three things, and I've been working 30 years, so I think you could too, but you're not the right fit for my team. So the sense of that, you know, you're too good. But again, broad generalization. I also have some young people to me that feel very old-fashioned, like they grew up in the 60s when I did, and have that hard work and integrity and the culture. But so, you know, you have to think of every person as an individual.
No, those were great things. And I'm sure no one in this room does any of those things. So we're in a good place. So moving forward a little bit, what about 3 mistakes that mid-career people consistently make that you've seen?
Yeah, no, 3 things that come to mind. One is, you know, many people throughout their career will learn new things, but forget about unlearning old ways. And it really is that combination of the two and not getting steeped in the past. I think secondly is working hard but not smart, meaning putting their head down and nose to the grindstone, doing all of the right thing, but not lifting up their eyes to see how is their industry, their company, their team changing, and are they bringing ideas and perspectives forward to help the company move forward rather than where it's been. And you get that by networking, and that would be the third thing, not really in continuing to invest and nurture their network because they're so pressed between family and professional obligations. So figuring out how you can build in that networking and build in those fresh perspectives to stay relevant.
That's fantastic. Networking is something that I don't know about the people in the room, but I always find it a little bit challenging as well because I think of myself as being really outgoing and really friendly, but sometimes you put me in a room full of strangers and I'm like a little shy. So I don't know, I think we can all relate and learn better.
I'm an introvert, so networking is particularly challenging. And you might be wondering, how can I speak in front of all of you and be an introvert? This is easy. What's really hard for me is walking into a large group of people and having to do the one-on-one. But I think you have to adopt a networking state of mind. And I learned early on, it's not about the volume, right, of business cards or how many people. It's about having a reason for going to a particular event and finding the 2, 3, or 4 people that you can connect with. And I find it's easier for me when I can give of myself rather than ask. So it's being open to those possibilities.
I love that. I love a networking state of mind. That's a really great way to think about it. One of the things that I neglected to mention about Linda is she is also a LinkedIn influencer. So we have the benefit of having her knowledge shared across our platform on a regular basis. So in one of your blogs this summer called The New 12-Step Leadership Program, you mentioned some critical points that you wanted to integrate into your life moving forward. And one of the things that stood out for me that I thought was incredibly fascinating was practice living in curiosity rather than judgment. Can you explain what that is?
Absolutely. Okay. So when you get to be where all of us are, right, we know how to process information very quickly. We understand our company culture, we understand business priorities. So when someone's presenting ideas, you know, we're on this rapid fire processing of, you can see the path 10 steps ahead, and I often do, and I may give the answer and cut off conversation because I can see the end point. And therefore, one, you can stifle, you're not really teaching, you're telling, so you're not helping your colleagues understand your thought process and enabling them to be stronger decision makers and carry that culture or those key things forward. But also you can get blinded by your own success and only close off new ideas and new information. So what I do with my team is we have a safe word, purple, and if I stifle conversation without explaining why, well, they didn't think I would hear the word purple over my own voice. So I bought purple lens cleaners that double as flags. And some of my male colleagues actually wear them as like ascots, and they start waving purple lens cleaner at me. And that's how I know, I have to stop. And so by being open with my team about that tendency and giving them permission to say time out, help us understand. It's another way of me empowering them, and then of course they are cascading the same messages and being strong advocates for the principles we're trying to employ, but it also helps them develop as thinkers and gives them more room to challenge me.
That's fantastic. I love that. Staying with that same post, because there was a lot of great meat in that post. If you haven't seen it, you'll definitely want to check it out. You also mentioned that you would challenge your own filters, which I love that concept. I would love to hear, and if you could share with the audience, some of your own filters that you've been able to challenge recently.
Well, absolutely. I work for a company that's global, that's matrixed and highly regulated. And so we hear a lot of no on our path to yes. And some of the no has been around how we might engage employees as brand ambassadors in social media. Some of it is about our ability to do real-time tweeting or engagement at events. And so very often, some of those filters, I can almost perfectly mimic what a compliance or legal advisor would say. And so for me, it's challenging what assumptions and all the no's and making sure I'm not closing off conversation of a new idea because of the past, but I'm thinking, what has changed? Is there new information that should inform what we think and how we approach? But then also on the interpersonal side, we all have experiences with colleagues and businesses, and some of which you wonder the motivations behind what they may be saying or how they engage. And so some of how I might react might be triggered by not assuming positive intent, shall we say, or because of past experiences, positive or negative, and making sure if I've had a negative experience with someone, I'm really giving them a fresh start and not making that influence, like tap an insecurity and react from that insecurity rather than looking at it dispassionately.
What led you to those particular filters? Where was there a jumping off point where you said, no, I really need to rethink this? Or did you kind of wake up one day in bed and say, these are my filters that I need to?
No, I don't think of them as formal filters. I think they just become a part of you as you're engaging. And, I just try to step back and as I watch people react to me, think about, am I reacting out in anger? It's like when if I tell my mother I went to the grocery store and bought 5 gallons of water before a big storm, she'll say, only 5 gallons? Why didn't you buy 10? And I'll just react from childhood. So I think it's about just stepping back as an adult and say, am I really listening with curiosity? Am I biased because of previous experience? Or is it something I'm already sensitive about? And how do I be a stronger partner? And of course, my company, perhaps like many of yours, offers professional programs that really help us think differently and think about the hidden intent and unconscious biases we have. And I just try to apply those tools and reset every once in a while if I lose the focus on that.
Yeah, really introspective, and I think that that's a lesson for all of us as well, to take a step back sometimes and think about the things that we've been doing and are they still working for us, and figure out ways to do them maybe a little bit differently. I'd love to take a quick poll of the audience. How many managers do we have in the room? Wow, a lot. And how many people do we have that are aspiring to be managers? Very nice. Nice mix there. So, Linda, for the managers and for the people that are aspiring to be managers in the room, what advice would you give to them in order to be a truly effective leader? You have managed many teams over your career. What's the key?
I think one of the most important things is to know that leadership is earned and not bestowed just by having manager in the title, and something that, at least for me, is going to be a lifelong journey. I don't see it as because I am a leader and a manager, I've nailed it. It's something that I have to continue to work on, and I have good days and I have not so good days. I think what makes you effective, or at least has made me effective, is realizing that leadership is about being in service of your team and not having them serve you, that you're there to help them move the agenda forward and remove the roadblocks, connect them to the resources, to the people that they need to be effective, and so not hog the spotlight, but shine the spotlight on your team, and really give everyone the opportunity to grow. And you're really cultivating their leaders. To me, the people I've worked with and my colleagues, they're my living legacy. It's not about the what I've done, it's about how I've inspired people. And when I see people who've worked for me succeed, like, that is my joy. I think it's also about being a good listener, listening to learn, again, to challenge your own biases, and to be willing to walk in the zone of gray and be wrong, because you are going to make mistakes and everyone will look because they're your mistakes. And you have to be okay with that and have the humility to acknowledge when you've made a mistake, and the humility to accept feedback and new data so you can learn from that.
Those are great pieces of advice. So on the flip side, what are maybe the worst mistakes that a leader can make with their team?
I think some of the worst mistakes I've seen are when leaders hug the spotlight, and it's really all about them, and they're very, they approach their connections, they approach the way they manage up as if they were the only brains in the group, and they don't want to share the spotlight with other people. And they're not helping their team make the right introductions, understand the political environment, understand how things are changing, and giving them those tools to succeed. I also think that leaders who are, who just focus on their own political savvy and don't open their Rolodex and are not teaching, but just telling, and that only think in one dimension. Maybe they're great, a command and control style leader may be great during a crisis, but that not may be good for other times. So I think if they only have one style and don't know how to pivot in response to changing circumstances and treat every person on their team as an individual and nuance how you lead them, those are some of the biggest mistakes. And I've made every single one.
Have you seen within your own organization leadership and leadership styles change over the course of time?
Absolutely. I mean, I've worked on the institutional side of the business, on the consumer side, in global functions, from legal to marketing. And I think what I've learned is, in any large company, there may be a set of core values, but how those values come to life depend on the microculture in which you work. So on the institutional side, it was, routine for people to call you up, not say hello, bark a question at you. Barely you'd answer, and they'd hung up and no goodbye. And that was fine. It was a very different culture. On the consumer side, it's very genteel, and everyone has the soft, the sort of the small talk before you get to the question. You don't tell people things are wrong directly. You sort of talk through it, and you have to figure out and adapt. And I think what I've learned is not to make assumptions about the culture, to observe, to ask a lot of questions, and make sure I'm adapting a style that fits that particular culture, and not just think because it's all, for example, Citi, it's exactly the same. So it will change. There has been, though, in our company of the past, I think 3 to 5 years, much more focus on building the leadership competency and helping unify what does a leader stand for, and giving up-and-coming leaders more tools to develop and grow.
No, that's fantastic. Where did that come from, the idea over the last 3 to 5 years? Did Was there an external kind of study of Citi that said, hey, you're doing this wrong, wrong, and wrong? Or
I don't know that it was anything motivated externally, just an evolution, I think, of our culture and of our talent organization. Recognizing that in financial services, perhaps like some of your industry, we have a lot of really brilliant people who are subject matter experts. And I think the only path forward for them, to advance was people management. But not everyone who's a subject matter expert has the natural aptitude or desire to be a good leader. And so it was really, I think, recognizing some of the challenges that existed and creating more ways for people to develop and really respecting people management as a competency in and of itself, and differentiating and giving subject matter experts that truly wanted to stay individual contributors more opportunities to think through how they might grow. But be mindful that just because you're an expert doesn't mean you're a great people manager.
No, I love that. There's a lesson there for certainly
everyone.
Every organization, absolutely. When we think about management specifically, what advice would you give to someone who's thinking about a career in management, but maybe questioning whether now is the right time for them? Am I ready?
I don't know if it's a question of time, because I think you really do learn by doing, but really thinking about yourself. Do you have the aptitude, to be wrong, to put other people first, to really give of yourself? And some of the ways you can test that is working with an employee affinity group or volunteering at a nonprofit and perhaps leading a project or leading some type of volunteer team, just to give you that exposure and experience so you could test the waters, and asking for a 360 feedback if you've already managed some projects, to understand what are your strengths and what are the issues. And for me, I modeled the behavior of strong managers that I found and used coaches and mentors to help me fine-tune my management style. And when you have some folks you work with that are very direct and willing to give you feedback unsolicited, it can be some of the best advice you get on helping you figure out what do you do next.
And that segues perfectly into my next question, specifically about mentors. So how much value do you place in having a mentor as a professional, for yourself personally, and for others as well?
So I don't think of having one mentor. I think of mentors in a variety of ways. There are some mentors that I think of people as mentors that wouldn't know I think of them as mentors. I just observe their behavior, how they handle themselves, how they lead, how they navigate a difficult situation, and try to adapt those tactics in my own life. Other people have been lifelong advisors, and I will talk through difficult situations or inflection points in my career with them. And there are others that I call them tactical mentors. They may have insight into a particular topic, person, issue that I'm trying to navigate a situation, and I may just over a cup of coffee ask them for perspective. So I don't think of it as any one person. I think at different points of our professional lives, there are different, there's different types of support you need, and then I just go and find the person I think would be the best person in that particular time and regard. And I also look for sponsors. So I think of a sponsor differently, someone who's going to be up there advocating proactively and strategically for me and making the introductions and having me sort of top of mind. And those I've also cultivated over my career.
Do you look for different things in your mentor versus your sponsor?
Yeah, my mentor to me is much more of a situational context and advice, where my sponsor is someone that when they're in a conversation, I want them to say, Linda is your person to do that, or that would be a great opportunity for Linda. So they're proactively advocating. It's like your personal sales force.
Yeah, and you mentioned that there are people you consider as mentors that maybe wouldn't know that you consider them your mentor. How do you have a conversation to formalize a mentor-mentee relationship or a sponsor-sponsorship?
Well, when someone approaches me to be a mentor, I want to understand why. Why me? What are they looking for? How much thought have they given when someone says, oh, but you've had such a great career, I just want you to mentor me. I don't know how to operationalize and be helpful to them. But if someone says, like you, I'm looking to pivot from X to Y, or I'm interested in moving into social media, and I'd like your advice, then it's something I can understand and feel like I'm a good person to actually do that. And I'm really looking for focus, clarity around the ask. And is it someone that, has substance to them? Like they're really going to do something with the information, they're well organized, they're an up and coming professional that I feel I can help move them in the right direction.
Great advice for everyone, I think. When we talk about social media, I know that's your passion, that's your baby. I would love to know and love for you to share a little bit about how you became a LinkedIn influencer and why was that something that was important for you?
Well, I've been actively using social media probably for the past 5 to 10 years, and I've always loved storytelling. In fact, when I was young, I wanted to be a journalist, so things have come full circle to have the opportunity to write. And I've been blogging about personal finance and a little bit about leadership, and when LinkedIn approached me about being an influencer, and I think it really came out of our partnership, Citi's partnership with LinkedIn to create the Connect Professional Women's Network on the LinkedIn platform, which is a community for professional women to really share ideas, insights, and some inspiration on how to move their career or their business forward. And my team at Citi, part of what Citi brought to the table was original content, sharing our personal, the journeys of myself and some of my colleagues. And that resonated with the community, and so I was invited to continue to speak about that. And for me, it was another way of paying it forward. I'm the first one in my family to go to college. My mom graduated high school actually last year because she was pulled out when she was a sophomore to go to work to help support her family after her father passed away. So I didn't have any role models. Teachers and guidance counselors helped me. And this is my way of doing like group mentoring, is by being able to talk about things that I've encountered in my journey. So LinkedIn provided that platform, and it was a great way for me to pay it forward, but also to learn about what is top of mind for men and women today, and what could we at Citi do through the resources we have to help fuel a professional's progress, career-wise and finance-wise. So I use it as a petri dish for me to bring great insights back to my team and my product partners, and think about what are the services we can provide that are responsive to the needs of our customers.
Do you take requests? Should we have people drop some ideas in a hat?
Always, you can find me on LinkedIn, of course, and happy to have you comment on previous posts or to give me ideas about what you'd like to see going forward.
Yeah. How would you, what would you say I should say has been your favorite post to write, your favorite blog post so far?
I think my favorite post was the one I wrote about making gravy, pasta sauce for those who are not Italian, with my grandmom Nina, who was probably one of the most important influences in my life. My grandmother, it's my maternal grandmother, grew up in an orphanage in Italy. She emigrated to the US to become a domestic help to her sister, and then was put into an arranged marriage. And at age 40, her husband passed away, leaving her a widow with 7 children. My mom was the eldest at, I think she was 15, 16. The youngest was 7. And my grandmother literally worked 3 jobs. She worked in a factory. She would help clean homes. And she sold house care products, Stanley home products, out of her house. And growing up as the eldest daughter of the eldest daughter, I was sent to my grandmother to learn all the right things to be a good wife: cooking, cleaning, sewing. But what my mother didn't understand is I learned more about business because I was my grandmother's inventory assistant. When people would come to buy the home products, I was the one setting them out on the table, doing all the bagging, putting out the coffee, so I learned how to sell. I was with her cooking all the family dinners and learned just how to sequence tasks, because when you're cooking for 50 people, you have to know how to sequence when you're doing the Feast of the 7 Fishes. So she really taught me so much, and I think after she passed away and I wrote that post, that probably had the most emotional resonance. But each one has a story, and many of them come from the conversations that started in the Connect group and that I've just tried to explore, or that I've heard when I have the opportunity to meet clients at Citi events. I really take those ideas and try to work on them.
Wow. That's a great story. Sounds like your grandma was an amazing woman.
Fantastic.
So just wrapping up a little bit from our side of the fence here, at LinkedIn, we look at employment as transformational. Transform yourself, transform your career, transform the organization. Linda, how do you see yourself transforming in the future?
I'm in the middle of a transformation now because 2 weeks ago I was asked to run social media and content marketing globally for the consumer bank rather than in the US. So
congratulations.
Thank you. I'm thrilled to be returning to a global role. And it really, for me, gives me an opportunity to remove my US filter and really think about social platform and how social media works in different countries and cultures. What are the key social platforms? What's the right kind of content? What does engagement mean? So I'm looking to be much more conversant and versatile and have a broader perspective on those issues in the next year or so as I bring this to life.
That's incredibly exciting. I know it's early in the process for you, but would love to know what are some of the key differences that you're already seeing between social media here in the United States and globally?
Well, I think there have been more similarities than differences. So I've had spent some time this past year embedded in Mexico and Brazil. And when I look through my colleagues, news feeds, whether it's Facebook, Twitter, or LinkedIn, people are sharing the same types of cat videos and the same thing. It's remarkably similar, and the same passions around food and music and entertainment and family. I think some of the differences that I see in Brazil, for example, and Mexico, people are more willing to share your content if you're a brand, and they're just so excited. And maybe it's just a state of where the Citi brand is in different countries, where in the US I don't see that same passion about sharing, and at least for financial services brands.
Any advice for aspiring bloggers in the room?
Yeah, I think the key thing is to write about something that's passionate for you and be willing to share your vulnerabilities. I mean, I've talked about people bullying me. I've talked about people calling me fat and telling me all the things I couldn't do. So I think if you're willing to be real and open up, not just about all the good things, but some of the deep-seated fears and insecurities, you will do so much good for all the other people who are reading. So people don't feel that they're alone, and you'll inspire more people to raise their hand and move forward. And to me, that's the biggest gift we can give with the platform of blogging that's available to us.
Well, Linda, thank you for your realness, for your openness. This has really been a treat for me and hopefully for everyone in the audience. We really appreciate your time. Would love to open the floor up to questions for Linda. Just anyone have anything that they would like to know more about? There's a mic here in the middle of the room.
Thank you.
Hi.
Hi, my name's Sarah. I was wondering if you had any specific advice to people who didn't want to take that manager track and wanted to take the SME track?
I think if you're interested in being an individual contributor, it's important to understand your company culture, like what's the runway for you? Is it that you're going to have an expanded scope and be able to talk about issues more broadly? Is there an opportunity for you to be an external ambassador and blog or speak at certain conferences to share that knowledge? Are there ways that you can hold regular roundtables with colleagues to be able to teach them? So I think there are ways through like an internal university, through informal lunch and learns, that you can demonstrate how you're paying it forward and how you're educating others to create that sensibility and share your knowledge. And that's just another higher order than just sort of popping in and out of projects, and showing how, bringing fresh perspectives in, whether you're doing a weekly email or a monthly newsletter. I think it's being sure that you're mapping with your manager and what's the culture for individual contributors and how do you differentiate yourself from others.
Linda, was management something that you had also always aspired to be, or was it something that came to you and you felt like, I'm not sure, yes, I'm ready?
Being trained by my grandmother, who grew up in an orphanage, her motto was the Mother Superior. So we called my grandmother's nickname was the General. So raised by her, I always thought of myself as the boss. And of course, when I became a manager the first time, acting like the boss was not the smart way to go, and I failed miserably. So I think I just, I watched my father was a manager. My grandmother, ran the family. I just felt like I was entitled to it. So it was just something I fell into. But I really, when I understood what leadership was about, I really enjoyed it and grasped it, because you have an opportunity when you see the aha moments and you see people get excited and you see them get promoted and move on. For me, it's like one of the proudest things. So I really enjoy that part of it.
Yeah. When you look at your own team, are you able to identify talent that should move into management, and do you broach that conversation with them, or do you wait for them to come to you about that?
No, it's a combination. I think as a leader, really when you see someone with an aptitude and if they have the interest, you want to put them in situations so that they can test the waters and get them in the right professional development programs so they can learn and feel successful as they move into it. I think the worst thing is throwing someone in a management role without any safety net. And just telling them, I'll help you through it isn't enough, but giving people a toolkit.
Yeah. Have you ever identified that management potential in someone who didn't see it in themselves and kind of had to help them navigate that?
Absolutely. And I think for people feeling like they couldn't listen or that they would be too harsh, just reinforcing and saying, you can do this. I've seen you work on a team. I've seen you interact with clients or colleagues, and help them see other sides of themselves. And again, sometimes they need the data to reinforce it so they feel comfortable.
Fantastic. Any other questions? Oh, thank you.
I work in tech, and I'm curious, you talked about not being overly familiar with managers or things like that, and sometimes to fit in with the guys, it's easy to go into that and not be a little bit more familiar so that you feel like you're included. And so I was just wondering if you had any advice about that or how you've navigated that in finance, which I'm sure is similar.
It's very male dominated. And let me clarify, I don't believe in treating my employees as the way I would a friend. That doesn't mean I'm not friendly. In fact, my team, we do a lot of outings together. We do walkabouts to visit local bakeries and coffees. We do karaoke night. So I just differentiate between being friendly. I treat my team as I would my family, which, with the same respect and attention. But I think it's important to find ways, and throughout different parts of my career, I've worked with more men than women, and finding ways to connect on sports, at least for me, has been a way. I love baseball, so it's easy. I'm not a big football or hockey person, but I've sat through plenty of games. But finding ways to connect on things that are mutual interest. But I never forget and lose sight of that I'm a woman and very proud of it. But it's just finding, it doesn't mean you can't go out together and be part of some of the things that the guys are doing. I just always did it on my terms and in a way that I felt comfortable.
Yes.
Hi. I'm curious to hear a little bit more about how you approach vulnerability as a leader, because you mentioned that's important because you've been a leader for a while and you're kind of confident in that role, and so you talk about failings and fears in your writing, but how do you think you can integrate vulnerability into being a people manager? Because I think a lot of times people can view that as weakness, but it's also a great way to connect with people that are looking to you for advice?
Yeah, so one of the ways I've done it, I was at a staff meeting and I was thanking people who, picked up some work while I was traveling, and I neglected to mention one person. And I saw her looking during the staff meeting, a little bit teary-eyed, but I didn't pick up on anything. And so after the staff meeting, she came and said to me how much I hurt her feelings because I overlooked her. And I said to her, you're right. So the next time the staff met, I started off by saying, I owe Heather an apology. Last week when I was talking, I completely overlooked her. That was a shortcoming on my part, and I should have written down everyone's name, and I apologize. And everyone sat there with their mouth opened. I think that's what you have to do as a manager, is when you make a mistake and if it's hurt someone, you just call yourself out on it. And there have been times that, when they wave purple flags at me, I go, well, yet another example. I think when you can be honest about some of the issues that you're struggling with as a leader, and I've made a point of sharing my 360 feedback with my team and ask them for help and give them permission to call you out on it. And then you can sort of make it sort of a joke, and with some humor, it makes it like they're not really feeling intimidated, and you're giving them the opportunity, and you enlist their help. And I think you have to find a way to do it that's just organic to you. And by me sort of, being open about it and bring some humor, like buying everyone the purple lens cleaners, just really reinforced it. And I think you just have to, that's the way it's worked for me.
Thanks, Linda. Yes.
Hi, my name is Von Gretchen Nelson. I actually wrote 5 questions down for you, but I'm only going to ask one, okay?
We love it.
Yes. So with many organizations struggling with diversity and inclusion, right, and especially with women in executive level positions, do you have a tailored message specifically for women of color who are seeking to advance in those executive roles?
Yeah, I think one of the areas that my company and many companies have to work on, it's not only getting more women, but more women of color. Because and Romaine and I were talking about this before, I think there's been a lot of opportunity for women who have come from privileged backgrounds, many of whom are Caucasian. But I don't know that we can say we've made the same progress for broader groups of women. And as someone who grew up in a very low to moderate income without family connections and went to a state college, I don't see as much representation of women like me with that background. And so first I would say is don't lose hope. I think we have to continue, all women and men, to work together to really help get rid of unconscious bias that continues to exist, and to make sure we're doing everything we can to inspire and raise up the smart minds. And one of the things I do is I work with an organization called Step Up, where we work with girls in under-resourced communities, many of whom are women of color, to give them a leg up and help them, inspire them that they can do it, and give them exposure to role models so they can see other women like them being successful. And I think there's more that organizations have to go. It can't just start with the women in our organizations today, but how do we go back from middle school forward and really engage more young girls and build a pipeline much further than we are today.
Okay, thank you.
Hi.
Hi, Holly.
Hello, Holly.
So call it wiring, call it environment, call it what you will. I think self-promotion, particularly for women, is a challenge. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on personal branding, self-promotion, and how you've approached that.
In some ways I've approached it well, in other ways not so good, because not too long ago, and I just wrote actually a post on this, as Romaine said, I'm an influencer, and as is a male peer of mine. And when people talk about him as an influencer, it's, oh, this is a sign of respect, and it shows how knowledgeable he is and well connected. And when it came to me, the tagline that I had was self-promoter, and it was a distraction from my day job, even though, of course, this was all approved from my company. And the sad thing it was other women who gave me the label of self-promoter while they were using thought leader for my male colleague. So these things do exist, and it suggested to me that I don't talk about my work as an influencer internally, so it doesn't further damage my brand. So there's a lot more room that all of us have to ensure that the adjectives we're using, that we don't describe men as passionate and women as emotional, men as decisive and women as aggressive, or men as thought leaders and women as self-promoters. I think that's something all of us have to take. And I think as women, we have to understand that some of those biases exist. Men more so than women, and this is sort of something we'll be talking a little bit more in our Connect group in the coming weeks, tend to feel less comfortable with women talking about their achievements. So it's important to put your achievements in the context of how it is helping the company move forward. And that's advice that 5 expert coaches gave me when I went to them and said, I just had this feedback, how do I work forward? So for me, I'm not shying away from the fact that I'm an influencer. I'm very proud of it, but I am connecting the dots more clearly to how my work as an influencer is supportive of our brand values, our brand pillars, and the overall business priorities. So making that connection and, you know, understanding who you're talking to and how you have to nuance that message to have it resonate in the audience. And that's where having a group of mentors and sponsors can be important for helping shortcut some of the negativity and reinforcing your positive message.
That's great advice. Is there an incorrect way to go about letting people know within your organization the things that you're doing? For the people that are in the room who are thinking about making that next step in their career, and to Holly's point, wanting to be recognized for the things that we're doing, is there a way to go about it that doesn't seem like self-promotion, but actually...
When you put it in the context of, you know, this has been an area that our company has been focusing on, and here are some of the ways that I've been working to like leverage my platform to support this goal, or leverage, you know, the programs available to me or my team in support of that goal. So leading with what the company is doing, and, you know, look, men can start with I, and we just have to, I mean, recognize that's the reality. And then for me, I'm more comfortable now at least articulating the business issue first, and then the ways I've been supporting that business issue.
So someone walked into your office and said, I did this, and I did that, and I did this, and I did that. What would your response be for that?
Well, I give them a pass because I know what it feels like to be on the other end. But I think, and when someone can show, you know, it's not just about them, but they understand what the company is trying to achieve and how they are helping move that agenda forward, that to me, just then you want to help them succeed. And it's easier for you to help others connect the dots.
Terrific. Any other questions for Linda before we wrap up? Yeah. Hi.
My name is Carrie Garten, and I'm an executive recruiter at Ernst & Young. We have a really big focus on flexibility at our firm. It's been something for me personally as a mom of 2 that's been huge. I'm curious as to your thoughts on flexibility. You know, it can be a double-edged sword in the fact that, you know, you say you want to go on a flexible work schedule, maybe it seems as though, okay, you're not 100% at work. So curious how you deal with that in your team and your thoughts on that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Citi has a flexible work policy that's available in, I think, almost all the countries in which we operate. So it's just part of our culture. You know, on my team, the way we think about it is we all have a role to play. Some folks want flexibility, that they come in a little bit later and work later so they could handle, and it's not just children. Some people train for marathons or Tough Mudders and just prefer to do their training in the morning. So we try to think of it, it's not a women's issue, it's not a mom issue, it's a people issue. And think about what is it that people, what do they need to balance and integrate all the different parts of their lives? And so we look at it on a case-by-case basis. I try to work from home every other Friday so I can get writing done. If I have to be in the office, then I'm in the office. And so we really look on a case-by-case. Some of it's informal, that's just a manager agreement, and there are others that are on a more formal, flexible work schedule where it's entered into a system and it's a formal agreement on a regular basis. And thus far, everyone on my team has been, you know, pretty individual. And, you know, I've always been, if you get your job done and you behave as an adult, if you need 2 hours to go get your hair done in the middle of the day, or you want to go see, your child in a holiday play, go do it. We'll know, let people know, plan for it. And as long as it's planned for and people know how to get a hold of you in an emergency, then go for it. And I do the same thing with my niece and nephew. I like being present for certain things like Halloween. It's a family tradition. And so but I think it's about being upfront about it, planning, and being flexible enough when you know there is something going on, you're launching a new website, and all hands are on deck, and not saying, oh no, on Fridays I only work from home, but be willing to say, look, I'll come in, I'll be available, because then you're going to get, more thought and actually more flexibility over time.
Fantastic. Any other questions for Linda? I have one last one. How do you feel about asking for a promotion? What are your thoughts on that?
I think it's so important to ask for a promotion. I would not approach it, this is me saying I want a promotion. I would say, I've really enjoyed what I'm doing and I would like to do more. I see, and the way I've sort of expanded my role in various ways about looking and seeing opportunities, new areas that the firm is interested in or seeing gaps and saying, I would really like to expand my role. Is there something I can do in this area? And sometimes it's been planting seeds and it may take a year to come to fruition, but I really put it not just about I want something, but here's where I think I can contribute and address a business priority, a gap, or a new area that could make a difference to our customers, and being willing to do some of the heavy lifting to get it going, even on a trial basis, and then say I'd like to revisit what this means from a compensation or a level standpoint, over time.
Terrific. Now you're all ready to ask for a promotion. Linda, thank you so much.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you for inviting me.
Treat.
Thank you.
And thank you to all of you for joining us. I hope you've enjoyed your Talent Connect, and we'll see you next year.